This is another edition of So You Think You Can Squat. My name is Matt Winning, multiple world record holder, 1,100-pound squatter, and been lifting for about 20 years. Been around EFS probably for a good 10 or 15 years now. In this edition, we're going to take a guy that has minimal experience in the gym, teach him how to squat. The way we're going to do this is, what you first want to accomplish is watching them squat on their own without any coaching and figure out where they're going to break in technique, figure out what muscles you need to attack, and figure out what other issues they may or may not have while they're squatting. So what we'll do is we'll take a guy, he's a pretty tall guy, just has a little bit of experience in his squats, not any competition or anything like that, and we're going to try to make his form as perfect as we can. Now the reasons for doing this is, as a type of athlete, you can take anything from a powerlifter and make it a better lift. You can squat better by watching powerlifters. You can do things that will make you squat better and more weight safer, and you can make progress and gains longer no matter what your goals are, whether it's just to be strong in the gym, strong on the platform, or strong out on the field. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to teach him or watch him squat just on his own technique and his own form, and see what we need from there. You don't need a fancy monolift or any kind of fancy bar. All you need is a squat rack or a cage and some room to squat, okay? So we're gonna bring this guy in, we're gonna watch him squat, we're gonna see what he breaks on technique, and then we'll talk about how we pick some of those things up and fix it. Go ahead. Look at his feet. Come and watch his lower back. Do 3 more. Watch his lower back. Okay, what we're seeing here is pelvic tilt right at the bottom. We're seeing his butt turn under his back. We're seeing his toe pressure come on his feet and come off of his heels. And we're seeing his eyes looking down, which is causing his upper back to round once the weight gets heavy enough to have any kind of pressure on his back. We're also seeing a huge quad dominance in his squat, which is basically hiding his lower back weak spots in his hamstrings. So what we're going to do now is we're going to readjust his form by using a box. We're going to teach him to set up correctly, and then we should make some big progress from there. The box squat is the best way to learn how to squat. Here you can see guys setting up the box. We don't exactly know what height we're going to use for him yet. We're going to dial that in as we go. But the box squat is the simplest and easiest way to teach somebody to sit back. It actually gives them something to sit on and gives them a point of reference when they're going down into the squat. And it also teaches you what muscles to use when you stand. So as we saw in his free squat, we were using a lot of leg strength and keeping our hamstrings and posterior chain, which includes lower back, hamstrings, and glutes. This is going to teach him how to do it correctly. And it'll also save a lot of energy with the teaching process. So what we're going to start off with is, when you learn how to squat, you got to start from head to toe or toe to head. You have to start from the top or the bottom and work your way up to fix the problems. Okay? When I do a heavy squat, I start with my feet pressure and I work up to where my shins are, my knees are, my hips are, my abs are, my lower back is, and my shoulders. I do this very quickly under the bar to make sure that my body is completely set up perfect. For simplicity of teaching, we're going to start him from the top so you can see where he needs to have the bar. The first thing that you want to try to do is to always make sure that your hands are in the same position every time you squat, no matter beginner or advanced. People can have small little errors in where they're setting themselves on the bar. This can cause this side of the bar to weigh up to 500 pounds and this side of the bar to weigh up to 450 pounds. It doesn't sound like much of a difference, but when you're balancing those kind of weights, it can be a huge difference. So now we see his hands are perfectly set up from these rings over, and we also are looking at this line in the middle of the bar to see where it is in contrast to the center of his spine. This needs to be right in the center of his spine. As you can see, we're very close, which is going to make sure that the weight is 50 on the left, 50 on the right in percentage. We don't have a separation. So if he sets up like this, that's going to tell me two things. One, either he has a tight shoulder or 2, he has a very dominant leg side. And some people will use a lot of left or a lot of right if they don't have a lot of experience. And this will cause them to set up on the bar like this and they won't even know that they're doing it. So the first thing to do is to make sure that the bar is set even. The next thing that we're going to fix is from here to the bar. Now, most people, go around the front, most people are going to have a position of look down. They're going to look down or they're going to look neutral. So, what we want to fix is, this is his natural position when he was squatting. What we're going to fix is I want his head up so his traps are pinched into the bar. I want his eyes on something that's a little higher than neutral. So instead of looking straight ahead, I want him to look about 25 to 30 degrees up. Now that for me is usually, see where those bolts go into the wall? That's where I keep my eyes fixed the whole time I'm squatting. Now you can see at this position, his upper back will not falter when the weights get very, very heavy. His body will stay upright, his chest will stay up as long as his head stays up. The most important thing with squatting heavy weights is that the head makes the body follow everything else. If his head falls, this weight will come forward as well and it'll pin him. And then the spotters will have to pick it up or he's going to dump the bar over his head. So the most important thing from the top end perspective is that the head stays up and looking at 25 to 30 degrees roughly in that area. This is another edition of So You Think You Can Squat. Now that we have the head fixed and we know that the head has to stay up to squat, the next thing that we're going to work on is the chest and abs. Now, when you're squatting, the chest has to stay upright. Too many times when guys are lifting, when they pick the rack up, what's going to happen is their chest is going to do this. It's going to fall over and it's already going to cause you to be in this position, which is not a good position to squat any kind of weight. So you want to keep that chest up, and that follows by keeping the head up. This locked in good position is key to squatting big weights. The next thing is right here. This part right here cannot move once the bar is picked up. From here up, it should look like that bar, nothing's changing. That thing should stay locked like a piece of granite the whole time. Okay? One of the other most important things from what I would consider the core down is tailbone. Now what you're going to want to see is this should not be flat. You should try to tilt this out and then pinch this up. This is what you want to see, a nice slope on his tailbone. This puts his body in an optimal position to lift crazy amounts of weight. If you can't hold this position right here, you can't squat. I don't care how strong your legs are, because you will fall over. So you want to make sure that this area is very, very strong and also keeps a nice slope the entire time that you're squatting. Now we got to work our way down. The next thing that we have to work on is all this here. The knees have to draw out the whole time. A squat is not an up and down exercise. It's a pushing out exercise. By pushing out, you learn to squat with the glute, the upper quad, and utilize all of this in one integral unit versus in pieces. If your knees shoot forward, the only thing you can stand up with is your quad. If you sit back, you can utilize the glute, the quad, the lower back, and the entire core to make the weights work, okay? This is one of the most important factors of making sure that you can squat big, big weights. Okay, so now we're good. We're good from here up. We realize that we have to push the knee out to engage the hip. We realize that this has to be in a nice curve. We realize that the head and the upper body has to stay locked. The last thing that goes through your head when you're squatting big weights is foot pressure. Now, when you're squatting, the foot pressure needs to be on the outside of the shoe, in the majority in the middle to the back part of the heel. That's where all the pressure needs to stay on your foot. If pressure shifts to the toe, then I guarantee if you look at the top, the knees have come forward, the quads end up doing most of the work. So it's very, very important to maintain that lateral pressure all the way from picking up the bar to squatting to even racking it. As long as the hip takes most of the pressure, everything works in an integral unit. So this is dominant, everything works. If something else takes it, it's isolated. And an isolated squat equals high injury and bad form. The next big key is most of you guys will not have the ability to have a monolift squat. So it's going to be impossible or pretty much a waste of time for me to teach you how this thing works, because if you don't have access to it, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to teach you how, if this was a normal power rack, which most colleges and all these people have, how do you actually do those correctly? The key with walking out, since we have everything fixed, is when you pick this bar up out of the rack, you pick it up like you're going to take it for a squat. Everything's locked, all the pressure that we talked about straight, standing up. Then you start with your walkout. You don't start stagger stance. Okay, so I don't have a foot in front of the other, because if you got 800-900 pounds, you just straight legged one leg, 800 pounds. How's that going to work? So usually you'll see that with lighter weights, but you will never see it with heavy weights. You pick up everything with both legs. Okay? So we'll have him crawl under the bar. He's going to go over all the checkpoints in his head. So the first thing he does is he sets the bar on his back, picks his head up, locks his upper back. Then he's going to lock his abs and his tailbone. He's going to push his knees out. And he's going to put lateral pressure on his feet. So he's going to do a partial squat. Go ahead. Now he's going to take a small 2-inch step back with whichever foot he likes. Then he'll do it again. Okay, now he's set up where he likes to be, which is a moderate stance squat. Pretty common for most athletes. Not too wide, not too narrow. He's got plenty of distance between the pin and the bar, but not too much where he has to walk it back another 10 feet. Now the first motion of the squat is to sit back first and push the knees out. Good. Stand it back. Now the key with this is teaching you, no matter what you do, your head stays high. Your head stays up. You don't look at your feet. You don't look at anything that's going on. This is when this exercise turns into a proprioception. You have to understand what your body's doing without looking. That's why you stay away from mirrors and you stay with guys that know good form. Again, just a partial squat. This is the proper form and the proper loading pattern of the start of the squat. Now when he goes to rack this in, he's going to take small steps and keep his head high. Now, good. Another edition of So You Think You Can Squat. Okay, now we have all the form technical things fixed. We have the walkout fixed. We have the body posture fixed. We have all the muscles firing in the correct area. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take him a full box squat with just the bar. We're going to see all the form and pieces of his body that we fixed. Show the proper technique for you guys. And then what we're going to do is we're going to work up and let him max and let him safely fail by utilizing some catch chains. Okay? We're going to let him safely fail, and we're going to watch all this form break down. Because what happens is that super strong guys never break form. It's about strength. When guys are first starting to train, they can't show their strength because their weaknesses falter first. Okay? So what we're going to see is we're going to try to bring about his weak spots. We're going to see what muscles are firing and what muscles aren't, and then that'll show you guys what you might need to attack on your training. Okay, go ahead and show a proper box squat. Utilize all the same technical things that we went over from head to toe. So now he's going to stand up with both feet. Go ahead. He's going to take a small step back. Great. Then he's going to start with the ass coming back first, pushing his knees apart, keeping his head up. Stand. Good. Do it again. 3 reps. 2. As you can see, the shin staying straighter. The knees are pushing out. The proper muscles are being used. This goes true for gear squats, wall squats, athlete or non-athlete. This is how you squat. So what we're going to do is we're going to slowly work up. We should probably see the same technique that we saw with the straight bar with 135. But what we're going to work up to is his max, no matter what that may be. We're going to see where his technique breaks. And then we're going to show you maybe some accessory work on how to fix it. You cannot fix weak spots on the squat by squatting. You have to do it with accessory exercises. So I can teach him all day how to squat correctly, but when it gets up to maximal weights, he's going to go back to instinct and use what muscles he has and don't have. So it's important that when we max today, that we see his weak spots and we make sure that his accessory work translates that so that his squat form will go up without having to squat more. He squats better. Go ahead and do 2 reps with this. Hey Pego, will you get a side spot? We're always going to use spots. You always want to use spots no matter if it's 135. You never know what can go wrong with a bar, so you always do everything right. Small step out, good. Now we're going to maintain a proper position on the tailbone, keeping the head up, push the knees out. Try to stay out of the way, Mikey. There you go. And he's going to walk it back in. Good. Now we're at 225. Hopefully we won't see any technique breakdown. If we do, we'll point it out and we'll go from there. Go ahead and give me 2 reps. Use a side spot. Hey, Peg, side spot for me, please. Good. Walk it back. Push your knees apart. Head up tall. There it is. Hold it. Go. Good.
Head back.
And rack it. On the first rep, off the box, we started to see a little bit of knee influx, so we started to see a little bit of knee bow. What that's indicating is a quadricep turning on and taking the pressure off of the hip. So when we go up to the next plate, it's going to get more erratic. It's going to show way more. But automatically, we've seen with just 225 that we have a knee coming in, which usually means quad dominance, hip weakness. Now we're up at 315. So we saw some knees coming in on the 225. Probably get a little bit more erratic on that. We might start seeing some spine shift over. So what we're looking for is breaking in the form to show us what muscles that we need to fix with accessory work. You guys stay close on this. Remember your technique if you can. Keep your head up. Good, rack it. That's okay. Go ahead, get another one. Now at the bottom, we started to see a little bit of knee shift forward. We started to see a little bit of upper back rounding, but everything still looked pretty good. It was still pretty solid, which still leads us that we can move up a little higher safely. Use like a 1 to 10 hard ratio. So I asked him, how hard is this 1 to 10? We got a 6. He called out a 6. So obviously it wouldn't be very smart for us to take a whole plate jump. So we're going to take a 25-pound jump or a 50-pound jump total. And then that should put us at about a 7 or 8. So we're getting around 80% of his perceived exertion. Hopefully we can do 405 and we can see some things going wrong. And we'll talk about those. Started to see a little bit of back turnover when he picked the bar out. He's fixing it as he goes down to squat. Knees are shooting way forward off the box, buckling it just a hair. Rack it. We got to the very top, we saw his toes popping up off the top. Okay, and we saw the foot pressure starting to change, which might be hard to see in the video. But what we want to see is this all the time. And we saw a lot of this, we saw a little of this, and we saw a lot of the back turning over and not staying locked in. So we're getting close to shit going bad, which is what we want. Now we're probably getting up around 80 or 90%, 8 or 9 at perceived exertion. We're going to start seeing things come back to instinct versus teaching. And this is what you have to do. You have to go up to a point that you break form to make form better. Sounds ironic, but it's true. If you don't see what's wrong, how can you fix it?
Sure it is, Ted.
Hey, Pego. You spot for me? This is the Matt Winnick show right here.
95 dudes standing.
Hey.
This guy didn't do shit today.
I still out-squat you. Get over here.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Okay. Here we go.
Fucking get after it. Let's go.
Come on, buddy. Guys, stay with that bar.
What?
If he has to bail, help him pick it up off him a little bit,
Let's go. Settle up. There you go. You're in. Throw it down.
Okay, still looking pretty good. Back staying pretty straight. Tailbone starting to flatten out. Ass is disappearing. Usually means the hips aren't staying locked in. The hamstrings are not firing correctly. And we have a lot of front and back foot pressure, which is telling us that we're shifting from hip to quad, instead of utilizing all the muscles together in one unit. So he's losing his ability to push out. It's causing him to stand straight up and down with the weight. You can also see it in the shin. When the shin comes forward and the knee's over the toe, you start to see that. That's when you know everything's shifting forward and it's turned into an up and down exercise versus a back and out exercise. This is another edition of So You Think You Can Squat. That was the most he had ever squatted, and all we really did was fix his technique at the top. Most he'd ever done was below 400. That's a Mastodon bar, so it's a 65-pound bar. He just did 425. A little sloppy, but still fairly strong. So this was small technical fixes. We've already bumped the squat up 40, 50 pounds, and we're talking, which is a big accomplishment. We're talking raw. No belt, no briefs, no bullshit, just flat out strength. So just by fixing some small stuff, we've already put 40 pounds on a squat in about 25 minutes. Okay, now we're getting up to around 9 or 10. We should start seeing some pretty big breaks in form, possibly a failure set. As you can still see, we have the chain set up in there, the catcher chains. He goes a half inch the wrong way, the weight's catched, and he still has spotters as well. So this is the only really safe way to actually take squats to a max.
That's the spot here.
Watch that close. There you go.
Let's go now. Settle up.
Good, lock it in. Take your time. Keep your head up now.
Get up there. Good.
Rack it. So we're at almost 95, close to 100%. We might have another 10 or 20 pounds in us. We stopped there. As we saw in the form, is knees shot forward, knees went in, back started to slouch. Back still stayed up kind of straight, but things started to fall forward pretty bad, and the strain was about 100%. So we saw the shins coming forward. We saw this and this. We saw all these things happening, which is telling us quad dominance, hip weakness, and a weak core. So we'll stop there. We've got the information that we need in order to make him better, and we've only really reinforced 1 or 2 bad technical squats in an entire max effort training. So now that we know what muscles we need, we can go attack those with accessory work. Try to hold your form best you can, buddy.
Let's go now. Set up strong. Let's go. Your head back in the bar. Take your elbows down. Keep your upper back tight. Let's go. Stay tight.
Yep, there you go. Good. So, where did we fail? We failed in the upper back. Everything in the bottom caved in like we talked about. Knees came forward, knees came in, but what made him not be able to stand up was from here all the way up here. All of this is what made him fail. He fell forward over it. The weights caught him, and we call it a handcuff, but basically it's a leverage point in which there's no standing up front. If he could stay like this, he would have a fighting chance. Just drive up with it. But because the chest falls, everything else falls with it. So we saw where he breaks. We got to build some muscle in here. We got to get these upper erectors really, really strong. So how are we going to do that? Well, there's a lot of ways we can do it. One of my favorite is the seated safety bar good morning. Now the seated safety bar good morning puts a lot of pressure right here, but it builds all of these muscles in here to make sure that we hold a good, proper position when we squat. So the seated safety bar good morning does a couple of things. One, it's seated. So you take away all your leg drive and all your hamstring activation. 2, it's on a safety bar, so it's pulling you forward like you don't want to go and making the muscles grow where you need them to grow. So with that being said, we're going to show the seated safety bar good mornings. We're just going to use a bar, and I'm going to show you how you build them up. Now obviously when we do this, we're going to break form. We're actually going to do a spine good morning versus what I would consider a hip good morning. So we're actually going to round over the back and straighten it up, because this is where we're failing, so this is what we need to build, okay? All right, now we're in a squat position. So what we're wanting to do is build this muscle up here. So what I'm gonna have to do is drop his head and round his back here like terrible form. Now he's gonna straighten his head up and straighten all this back out. Good. Now, another way that you can make sure you're not getting a lot of leg drive is to put your legs in front of you. So instead of having your legs in a squat position, he's gonna put them up front and put his toes up by there. Now he's gonna do the same thing. Round over and bend all here and straighten it up. Takes away all leg and hip activation, it's all back. This will make your back strong, not only for squats, but for deadlifting as well. Rep ranges on the seated safety bar good morning work very, very well in between 8 and 15 reps, or sometimes even 45-second sets. Reason being is we're trying to build muscle. So this is not a great exercise for max effort. Not to say that we haven't ever done it, but it usually works better to develop a lot of volume and muscle mass. And to do that, you need quite a bit amount of time under tension in order to build muscle. You're not going to build muscle with a 1 rep max. We fix the upper back with the safety bar seated good mornings, which is one variation of many that we can fix for the upper back. The next variation, which is also an awesome one, is the reverse hyperextension, but this is going to target a little bit more the lumbar spine and the tailbone. Now, at the very bottom of the box, if you watch this video over again of him squatting, you're going to see his ass disappear under his back, which shifts everything forward. The only way to get this strong is by doing good mornings, heavy front squats. You can utilize some of that. You can utilize reverse hypers, back extensions. The list goes on and on. Check EFS for their exercise database. But this is a second to none exercise, and there's only one reason for it. You're developing these muscles when you utilize this without causing any vertical spine compression. Everything else that we try to do today, we're going to try to utilize spinal decompression. So now he's going to show you how to do these reverse hypers, and what we're going to show you is there's been a lot of changes in how people do them. Single-legged, no tempo, but what we want to see is we want to see a slow 3 seconds up, 3 seconds down tempo. I utilize a lot for myself and my clients. The reason being is a 3 second up, 3 second tempo takes away all the stretch reflex and makes you have to muscle the weight the entire time, just like you would need to support yourself in a squat. Your squat's not going to be bang bang and done. It's going to be tight and held tight for a period of time. So your training has to elicit that, or it's not going to work. Good. He's using a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Trying to squeeze his lower back and his ass and take away the hamstring activation. We're trying to isolate this area right here, so when he gets to the bottom of his squat, his ass is sticking out versus flattening over. The only way to do that is to develop these muscles right here. If you want to be strong, no matter what you do, you want muscle right here. This is another edition of So You Think You Can Squat. So we've seen the squats. We've found where he breaks. We've seen most of the problems lie in the upper, lower back. There's some other areas we need to attack though. The exercise that we're going to use is a glute ham raise. Now, this exercise has been used for a long time, but the key of it is if this guy can squat 475 or 450 and he can't do a glute ham raise, which we've talked about already, he's going to show you how he struggles with it. What is he going to be able to squat once he is able to do 5, 6 reps with this exercise? So now we're at the glute ham raise. We're going to go over this, we're going to show this, and we're going to show that he can't do it. So this is going to show him and everybody else that if you can't do a glute ham raise, it's probably a weak spot. I mean, I'm 320 pounds and I'm a good lifter, but I can do this for 6 or 8 reps holding on to a 45-pound plate. But that's why I'm strong. I found a weak spot when I first started these motions and first got one of these machines. I couldn't do one either. Once he develops this area, his ability to squat and deadlift and do all these things are going to really be enhanced. So let's see if he can do one. Go, go. Oh, good form on the way down. And not too bad. Is he cramping? Yep. Is he scared? So we pulled one out of our ass. We got it, but we got a severe hamstring cramp, which is telling us one thing. Hamstrings are not used to that kind of workload. They're not used to pulling up his own body weight. So if we're trying to squat twice body weight and our hamstrings won't even pick it up, that's showing us a definite muscle weakness. We've trained the back. We focused on that. We've trained the hamstrings. We focused on that. There's always a weak spot that every lifter has and he can never do enough of, and that's abs. Ab training has to be a consistent part of your program, no matter if you're a beginner or advanced. We probably do anywhere from, at the advanced level, I probably do anywhere from 200 to 400 ab reps of something every week. They need to be trained consistently in order to maintain and make progress. So we're going to show a couple ab exercises that you can do that'll really help, and we utilize these almost every week. There's a lot of ways that you can train your abs. One of the best ways to train them is in a functional state, by meaning I usually train my abs standing. When I'm deadlifting, I'm on my feet. When I'm squatting, I'm on my feet. If I'm on my back, I'm probably going to the hospital, especially to powerlifting meet. Same thing with athletics. You know, if you're not on your feet, probably chances are the ball's going by you and you're no good. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to train your abs not on your feet, because that's when you're going to use them, okay? And it's also when you're going to protect your back. So one pretty basic but effective exercise is the standing band crunch. So basically you're going to grab the band about halfway up, or wherever your strength level or band tension may be. You're going to keep your back pretty upright, your butt out like you're doing a good squat. You're going to pull it down, utilizing only abs to do the exercise. In closing on Think You Can Squat, we've showed max effort work. We've showed 3 or 4 accessory exercises that you would build on. Some of the keys of what I would recommend is you don't want to do any more than 4 to 6 accessory exercises. You want to pick one hard accessory exercise that's what I consider balls to the wall. Like if today, the workout that you saw, I would push the seated good mornings for a set of 8 and work up to where it's almost heavy enough that he can't get it. Then the hypers are more restorative, the glute hams are more restorative, the abs that we showed are more restorative. But you don't want to keep your workout right around an hour, no more than an hour 15, or you're just wasting your time. You need to push the accessory work in a tired state. You need to make sure that you're resting long enough to the max work is actually showing your max and not being tired. So in closing, you want to train smart, you want to utilize a lot of different exercises, you want to rotate them, and you want to make sure that you're training what you need to train versus you want to train.